corporate welfare.
Yeah, you know, privatization can be good.
Yeah, real privatization.
Yeah, real privatization. Because what really is good is the competitiveness. If it's a privatization where you actually have people competing for the business, it's good. If it's a privatization where you have a monopoly going from government workers to a private company, it's just as bad.
Yeah.
But
definitely.
why anyway is the government telling you what to do with this money in the first place exactly?
To protect you. That's the rationale, is that you are not smart enough to provide for your own retirement. We have to do that for you. But just as Congress voted in Social Security, Congress will vote out Social Security. Eventually, that's going to happen.
Now, but there always the question is, inevitably, the people that are objecting are going to be saying, well, what's going to happen to those people that just don't save?
If it's solved later rather than sooner, they're going to be in a world of hurt.
Mm-hmm.
If they would solve it sooner, I think what could happen is, like when we were on our ticket in 2000, what we had talked about was selling off a lot of the federal government assets.
Right.
They own almost half of the western lands. I mean, they own almost half of California, 3/4 of Nevada. They could sell off a lot of their assets. That money could go into private annuities for anybody that's over 50 years old to provide for their retirement. Mm-hmm. Now, the difference between private annuities and Social Security is, if you die too young, that annuity can go, and you could will that to your children.
Right.
So they have something to retire on. And the Social Security is, you die, you're gone. They give you, I think, $250 and so long.
That's another thing, is that people, if you die early, your children don't get any of the money, or your family gets none of the money that you gave into Social Security.
Right.
I think that if we were to eliminate Social Security, we would need to really push through churches and private organizations and through employers that you should put part of what you earn into some kind of an account for your old age. And I think that should be, you know, done traditionally, and I think we would have to try to make sure that's done, and maybe churches and civic organizations and things like that could push for this to be done, because a lot of people don't plan for the future.
Yeah, but the government shouldn't be forcing you to put money in, say, stock market, or bonds, or Social Security, or real estate, or anything like that. It should be up to the individual and decide on how they want to provide for their own retirement.
Right. I have basically my retirement is in collectibles, and I hope that they're still valuable when the time comes around for me to retire. But you know, I'm not depending on Social Security. I am making plans to not get my Social Security, and when I talk to most young people, they're making plans not to get it either. They don't think they will.
And that's why I say that eventually it'll just disappear. The Libertarian Party is really taking a lead on trying to end Social Security, not fix it. And eventually that's going to happen. You know, as people, as that the bottom of that pyramid gets thinner and thinner, and less and less people are holding up more and more people, they simply can't afford to pay the Social Security anymore, and they're going to revolt. And all it's going to take is a plurality of the electorate to say, look, we're fed up with that. We're going to bring in the Libertarians to fix this thing. We don't want to keep paying all the money that we earn for the rest of our lives just for these, so these old people can go to Florida in the winter.
Now, when Social Security started, there were how many people for each elderly person, or how many people in Social Security? There were a lot more then than there are now.
Yeah, it was I don't know, 33 after a few years after it had been going. There was well over 30 people per people paying per retired person. And right now we're at I don't know, I think it's like about 3.5 people.
3.5 people, and it's going to lessen.
Soon it will be 2. And then as more people go into the underground economy, it's going to be less than 2. It's going to be, you know, you're going to basically have 1-to-1. So what I envision is that you're going to get a little postcard of the person that you're sponsoring with, you know,
The elderly person
they'll be
that
waving with their Bermuda shorts in Hawaii, and say, "Here, this is where your Social Security dollars are going this month." And
we get a sponsor. Maybe they should have a private program like that where they have.
Well, isn't it? It's curious because I believe the generation that actually are the parents, the baby boomers, are some of the richest collectively generation who've ever lived probably in human history. If you think about in terms of medical advances, what they've saved, home ownership. What does it mean when they say Cato's talking about, and at some point it'll be an unfunded liability of $12 trillion? My brain cannot do abstracts like that. So I'm thinking that eventually people don't, I mean, when we explain Social Security to people what the problems are, people don't really understand that. They think of it as a reification, like my money goes into a little box that has my name on it. That's what I think most people's concept are, even though the pyramid does work. I think that if you actually talk to people, little box. Where does the money actually go? Because obviously the money comes right out of the taxes. It's not actually even probably going to any such trust fund. We know that's a fiction.
No, well,
What happens to it?
Yeah, it does call it a trust fund, but the trust fund is IOUs. And so what will happen after the year 2017, or if Bush's plan goes through, probably the year 2011, they'll go to the trust fund. Well, the trust fund has no money. So you would have to raise taxes to put money into the trust fund to pay back Social Security. So the Democrats will tell you that Social Security doesn't actually run out until like about 2040 because they have all this money in the trust fund. Well, there is no money in the trust fund. There is no lock. There was never a lockbox on the trust fund. It has had the money comes in, the money goes out. Most of the money goes out actually for retirement benefits. Some of it goes for disability. Some of it goes to fund the program. And then what's left over just goes out to other things, to the war in Iraq, to farmer subsidies, or whatever else that the government feels that they should be spending our money on.
And the Bush administration is increasing social spending in the U.S. even quicker than Clinton did, at about 3 times the rate.
Oh, absolutely.
So, in fact, all spending. I think that there's been a monstrous increase in social spending, foreign aid.
Oh yeah, the difference between Clinton and Bush is that Clinton used to actually veto the Republican Congress when they would come up with these outrageous spending bills, and he kept spending in check relatively. I mean, it was increasing about 3.5% a year. Under Bush, it's been increasing about 6.5% a year, and he has never vetoed a bill yet.
That's amazing. Now we're depending on the Democrats to keep us fiscally conservative. That doesn't. That's not very good. I don't have much hope.
Well, what I want to know is, let's say in Cato's nightmare that it actually became 18% of your paycheck.
Now explain to people what Cato is.
Oh, Cato is, yes.
I'm going to know what Cato is.
It is probably the world's premier libertarian think tank in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
And they put out publishing on issues on everything from Social Security to school voucher programs.
They think all day.
They think all day. And if you're really interested, you can just go to cato.org and look up. In fact, Michael Tanner, who's their Director of Health and Welfare, came up with several policy papers. But in this nightmare of 18%, in addition to that...
18% of what?
Of your paycheck.
Okay.
And how much, in addition to that, that go to, let's say, your ordinary federal taxes. So for the normal human being, let's say in 2020, what could you reasonably predict would be what you actually receive back from your paycheck? I mean, what's your percentage left at that point?
Well, very little, and it's 18% will probably get you through the 20s, but it's not going to get you through the 30s. You know, that 18% is going to probably have to go up over 23%. And eventually, that, like about 2050, if everything keeps going the way that it's going right now, and if Social Security stayed at 12.4%, is that 74% of the national income will be going towards Social Security. The trillions of dollars that we'd have to pay out to Social Security, and the other 26% would be going to pay down the debt. There would be no money for any federal program other than Social Security and debt payment.
And right now we have that percent. We have the 6% from you and 6% from your 6.2% from you, 6.2% from your employer. Now your employer, I need to point out, takes that out of what he would be paying you. Because after all, he is smarter than you. He is your boss, right? So he's not going to take it out of his pocket. No. He's going to take it out of the money that he would pay you. So there's that money, and then there's the state income tax, and then there's the federal income tax, and then there's taxes you pay in sales tax, which in California is what, 8 point something or 7 point something percent?
8.5.
And then there's taxes you pay on your phone bill, your cable bill, your gas bill. All these taxes already come up to about 50% of your income when you add them